being 7 o'clock, we'll call our regular scheduled board meeting to order and start the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next up is roll call.
Emily is absent. Cody Franzen.
Yes.
Doug.
Yes.
Carissa.
Yes.
Cody Spangler.
Yes.
All right, next up, we will require a motion to approve the amended agenda.
All right, we have a couple of changes. Some of them were because of the weather this evening, and some individuals, for safety's sake, decided to head home as they live out in the country, and a few others were just some small additions, just walking through them very quickly. We also had one sickness. Mr. Boss is sick today, so he will not be here tonight for an elementary report. Number 4, with the presentation from our tech director, staff decided to head home to make sure he made it home safely, so we're going to push that one to January meeting. I added number 7. We had number 6 as a discussion point of the Phoenix Advisory Committee, and then I added number 7 for the approval of the the amended Phoenix Cooperative Agreement. And we added 15, which would be the school board whole discussion about alternative dates for the January 9th meeting. We have some conflicts there, so we need to work through tonight. And then the final was a removal of the executive session. There's no longer a need to have executive session this evening.
Do I have a motion to approve the amended agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Doug. Second.
Second.
Carissa? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Conflict of interest disclosure.
There were none.
Public input.
None as well.
Okay. Consent agenda. I will require a motion to approve the following: minutes of the regular scheduled board meeting for November 14th, 2022. Minutes of the Cornwall Cooperative Board of Advisory meeting on November 16th, 2022. The resignation of Allison Gehring from the position as junior high volleyball coach, and we thank her for her service. The resignation of Kendra Peterson for the position of head volleyball coach, and we thank her for her service. The hiring of Braden Wallenstein, is that correct? For the position of strength and coordination coach, financial reports, and claims. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
By Carissa, second.
Second.
By Cody Spangler. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Administration reports. High school principal.
So we had Thor Onenson, who went to state, got a superior there, so just a congratulations to him. Emily Knodel, she also went to state FFA. She got 7th out of 21 in extemporaneous speaking, so nice job to her. And then our volleyball season and our junior high basketball season has ended, so job well done to them. Wrestling and basketball is now started, so we'll keep working with that. Our seniors will be giving their capstone project presentations on Thursday. So it'll look a little bit different this year. We're going to do it during the regular scheduled school day before we've done it on a Flyer Friday. Our hopes this time is to allow some juniors to be able to go and observe some of those presentations so they kind of understand what to expect for the following year. And how they did that was the capstone teachers organized it so it would be something that might be something that they're interested in. So they don't need to choose who they go watch. They get to go watch based on the topic and whether it's something they'd be interested in seeing. So there will be some judges there. We'll have 6 judges, 3 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon. So thanks to those judges for coming in. And then juniors will be in the room. They're advisors. We've scheduled a rotating sub, so any advisor that was advising that student gets to go watch as well. And then there is one administrator, and the students got to pick an administrator to come and watch too. So it'll be administrator, junior, advisor, judges, and the student will be in the room this time. So we're excited for that as long as we're here on Thursday. A big thanks to all the students and staff for carrying out our Blitz Day on November 23rd. Elementary and middle school, high school all got together. And then we just did some fun stuff in the morning with those elementary kids, and that's always something that they look forward to, so that was fun. And then, nice job to our students in our music department on their Christmas concert. We know that wasn't an ideal situation, but we did it and we got through that, so we thank them for being flexible. The music department has done a really good job of allowing some students opportunities to fundraise for their Florida trip. So the last fundraiser that they did, they sold sheets, so if you were the proud owner of new sheets, you'll be happy to know that they made $4,400 selling sheets, and they sold over 360 sets of sheets. So that was awesome. Next will be the world's finest chocolate. That will happen over Christmas time, so if you're looking for some of that, that's when that will come out. And then staff and students have been doing 12 days of holiday cheer, so it's jeans all December for staff, and then we just have some fun dress-up days for students and staff to be involved in, just to be supportive and make sure everybody's having a good time during the holiday season, because it's not always easy for everybody. So parking in the high school lot and on that curb is still kind of an issue. And you know, a couple of things for that is that that's the emergency spot, so we don't want to be parking there for that reason alone. Second off is when the snow is falling and they're out there removing snow, then all that snow kind of gets stuck there, and then they can't remove it, and then it just kind of piles up in that area. So if you're coming to the high school and you're getting out of your vehicle, we ask for you to park in the parking lot, not on the curb by the building. If you're just picking up a kid, obviously that's easy to do, but not if you're parking and coming inside. So just an FYI on that. And then those are just some upcoming dates for some things that are happening here, so that's all I got for now.
Questions for Katie?
Only have you guys thought about posting, like a sign out there about no parking and then actually towing their cars away? If it's an ongoing problem and no one's listening,
Yeah.
post a sign saying no parking there, and then
Is there a sign that says that?
give that an opportunity to work, and if that fails, then
Oh, it's the yellow on the curb,
Mhm.
but there's not a posted sign.
I would post a sign so they can't use that for an excuse for not knowing, and
Yeah.
then if they refuse to comply, remove the vehicle. Cause it seems like it's a reoccurring theme.
Yeah. And I'm not usually here when they're doing that, it's usually early morning. I think it's a lot of lifters early morning. So sometimes the janitors will just get in and move the vehicle.
Yeah, now that we have, if it is during lifting, now that we have a head strength coach in place, we can maybe
Right.
have that individual peek out there and maybe have some extra exercises that those individuals can do if they choose not to park in the parking lot. That might be the quickest way to solve that issue.
Well, that, and if their parents have to go get their vehicle out of Daryl's tow yard,
Mhm.
that might persuade them to comply.
Anything else for Katie? Jake?
Last week on Wednesday, we had the state superintendent's meeting. It was in Oklahoma. A couple of topics that came up that I wanted to report back to the board were, that was the governor's budget address. That she had informed us that she is looking at 5% increase for public education. The consensus of the group was that's great, but, and with that but being that there's a lot of inflation that is happening, and that 5% is, on a typical, on a regular year with, average inflation, that would be a really nice increase that we would see in public education. But with the inflation costs where they're at, that makes things a little bit more challenging. In that budget address, it did say that with the total between the 6% last year and then the proposed 5% this year, that is a half a percent total increases above what inflation costs have been. But there's some predictions that inflation's not done yet, but there's still gonna be some increases that we're gonna see that we haven't seen yet, and there's some concerns with that. So ultimately, with that 5%, that's the consensus of the group was that's a great starting point. But I think that there's maybe some more discussions and some more work that needs to be done with that one. There's a heavy discussion about the social studies standards. That's something that we have not talked about yet as a board, or talked much about as a board. But that's something across the state that's gaining more and more attention. attention. What I would like to do over the course of the next couple months, the social studies standards are going through committee reviews right now. And I believe it's in April is it when it goes to a vote for acceptance of those standards or not. The school administrators of South Dakota and the ASBSD had put together a board resolution, and that is for any boards who feel strongly that they are opposed to those standards. That boards could pass that resolution if they chose that was appropriate to send a message to the state that, you know, this is something that we don't view as positive. So what I would like to do is, there's been a couple of districts that have done some fun things to help share what those standards are to their boards. One district read a standard to the board, and the board had the opportunity then to pick what grade level those standards were. And the standard that was read was a first grade standard, and the board, no board member for that district picked something that was lower than fourth grade, or where they felt that standard belonged. So some fun things like that where we can kind of see firsthand what these standards will bring to the table. I think that we need to go through a process like that ourselves instead of just looking at what other districts are doing, you know, experience that, feel that ourselves, so we can generate our own opinions. And after we go through that process, then we can decide if that's something that the district supports of that resolution or not. We are starting tomorrow, this is weather pending obviously, we are putting together a committee of people to review our school safety plan and adopt and create a new school safety plan. It's been a number of years since the district has gone back and revisited reviewed the school safety plan, so it is long overdue. We have a team of 6 people, Katie, Shane, myself, Chris Sweeter, our counselor, Kirk McCormick, with all his years of law enforcement, and now with the couple of years that he has with experience in education. Figured that would be a great candidate to have on this committee, and then Chief Brewer will also be joining us. So we're anticipating this will take a number of meetings, so it will take some time, but we have some model plans that we have that I've researched and looked at, and we'll take pieces from those plans and make one our own. So excited for that process, and you know, it's like I said, that's something that's long overdue. So it'll be good for us to put that plan in place, and then once we get the plan in place, developing the familiarity as an administrative group, and then the next step would be the training part of it. How do we train our staff, and what pieces do we want to train our students with? Typically with a safety plan, there's pieces that are introduced to the students enough to make sure that in certain situations that they know what they're supposed to do and that they can stay safe. But ultimately we want to, it is a safety plan, so we want to keep the contents of that plan fairly confidential so it remains safe. But that'll be a pretty extensive process that we'll put together with this team of people. I think that's the concert. I want to touch base on that. Thank you for bringing that up, Katie. So we did have a group of people. We're making that decision on when to have the concert, and when we got to that point when it was just safest to postpone it for that Thursday evening. Prior to that, I had talked to our music department, and they said that with some circumstances with the main director of the elementary portion of the concert was going to be out from starting this Wednesday through up until winter break, Christmas break, and was not able to do any date after this Wednesday. It became really limited for the days that we had available with all the number of other activities that were going on outside of that. So the music department and I determined that the best option for us, and really the only option for us, was that Friday at 1 o'clock. I want to thank the community. I know that wasn't ideal for some parents to have to take off and use PTO at work, but I was very impressed with the number of people that showed up. I thought it was a tremendous success, even though we had to go with probably not the most favorite option for parents. I was proud of our parents to rally and find a way to get here and support our students. That's all I had.
Questions for Jake?
Sure.
Okay. Unfinished business. Didn't have any, correct?
Correct.
New business. The school board will review the 2022-2023 safe return in-person learning plan.
So this is something that's required every 6 months. We've been going through this for the last year and a half here, since we had, the state required that each district put these plans together. The plan is in your packet. I've gone through on the packet and either had a strike through or highlighted in red any changes that are being proposed. We had a group of people that read through these plans individually and provided feedback for me to put additions into this plan, and then for me to bring these recommendations to you. So the process that we have, you can see there's 3 items on there. We have to, we'll talk about the plan. We have to allow for public comment for anybody that would like to provide input, and then we have to make a motion to accept the amendments to the plan. So as you can see on page 5, the top under the COVID-19 cases and close contacts, that first portion of it we're no longer doing. So that's something that was in place for the initial part of the plan, but as restrictions for COVID have loosened, that's no longer applicable, so no sense in keeping that as part of the plan. Number 6 then, page 6, under the diagnostic and screening testing, the first part of it, we had free test kits that were provided by the state. We still have some of those that are remaining, so we eliminated the top part of that we would provide a take-home test for the parents, for the families, and we will provide a test for them as long as our supplies last, but after our supplies are out, then parents will have to either go to their medical provider to get one or utilize one of the over-the-counter test kits.
We have plenty at Freeman Regional.
Oh, okay,
If you run out, let me know, I can probably bring some over here.
very good.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then the first 2 bullets on page 8 at the top, those are dates that are in the past, so those are no longer applicable. And then just change the dates at the bottom to represent the 12/12/22 review of the plan. And then if you're curious who was part of that committee that read through these, the names are listed on the back page. Or the positions are listed on the back page.
Okay, the board will allow public input for the 6-month review of the safe return in-person learning plan.
Got any input, public?
You don't want one?
All right, so we are on to 3. We will require a motion to approve. I suppose we should have any discussion first before there any discussion from us as a board on this.
I didn't read the whole thing, but what I breezed through seemed perfectly acceptable to me.
All right, then we're gonna go on. Require a motion to approve the 6-month review of the safe return in-person learning plan. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Doug, second.
Second.
Carissa. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the school board will hear an update about the delegate assembly meeting.
So it lasted much longer than I anticipated. There was some pretty lively discussion on several items. They spoke at length at the beginning about the social studies standards, and the base of the discussion, the general consensus was everybody was unhappy that the people on the panel who put the standards together were outside of South Dakota, and also the review committee did not include any educators. So that was a lively discussion. Everything else, there were some minor verbiage changes in most of the standing positions and the resolutions. The one that failed miserably that the ASBSD recommended was changing the date for school board and school bond elections to the 2nd Tuesday in April or June, because everybody wanted local control so they could line up elections that made sense for them, and also when they matched up with their city elections. As an aside, an amendment was proposed to that by the Sioux Falls School District to go to a 4-year cycle to change state law to school board terms lasting 4 years instead of 3, so they could make it a little more political, and and line up with national elections, and that was defeated soundly as well, so. That was really, that took about an hour and a half, just that one resolution, everything else was just minor verbiage changes and passed on the recommendation of the SBSD. Questions for Doug?
Okay. The school board will hear a report from the Phoenix Advisory Committee.
So in your packets, we have the cooperative agreement for football and softball. What I did in the packet is I went through, or in this document, I went through and I highlighted in green areas that were part of our discussion at this meeting. So the first part on page 3, for the district shared financial responsibilities, that's something that came up that, how just trying to recall. Thankfully, we had one person bring the agreement to the meeting. It was very good to have at least a copy there. So because we didn't have a copy there, that was an oversight on my part, and we'll fix that in the future for meetings. But I want to make sure that every district had that highlighted when they bring that information to the board, so we can discuss it and make sure everybody was reminded of what our process is. So the financial responsibilities for all 3 districts are based on a percentage base. So if you have 4 athletes out of the total number that are part of your district, you would pay that percent, the number of the athletes that participate divided by the total number of athletes. And then on page 4, we discussed under number 5 that each school district is responsible for getting their athletes to and from practice, and that ties into the last sentence on page 3 in that paragraph. The districts will be responsible to fund all individual district capital costs and expenses. And then moving on to page 6 for the hiring, evaluation, procedures, was discussed that, right now our co-op has gone extremely well, but in the future there may be cases where we're presented with a tough situation and we have to make a tough choice on whether a coach remains as a coach in the co-op and what does that process look like. Under number 3, under that section, this is something that in Freeman, we have the process of the superintendent and the activities director meets with every head coach at the conclusion of each sports season, and then none of the coaches get paid until that meeting takes place. So it creates that urgency to make sure that we get that done, and while everything's still fresh in people's minds. With the co-op agreement, it says that all 3 ADs should be meeting with the head coach. So that's something that will change, and we'll follow this agreement in the future for any sports co-ops that should not take more than 3 ADs to meet with each head coach. And we also have this advisory committee where concerns can be brought to this advisory meeting as well. And that would, in the future, that would likely come from the ADs then after their meetings. Up above that, just that individuals would be, if there's a opening for a position, that the head AD, which is Christy, would be the individual that sets up the interviews for hiring those positions. And then we just pointed out that it's not required that we have equal representation from all 3 schools, but that point there, that although it's not required, it's highly recommended when 2 or more coaches are needed or desired for a sports season, that each community or district be represented. And I think the consensus in the meeting was that, under even a single hire, that would be good to do our best to try to make sure that there's representation from each community, and then each district. And then page 7, this is something that was caught, that I'm not even sure how we originally landed on the first topic there, or the heading there of dual sports participation, grades 8 through 12 only. I'm not sure how 8 was landed on, but this came up from Brad Barron's caught that from the superintendent in Marion, and he said that they have a 7th grader that's planning on going out for softball that is a really good athlete and is probably in a position that could be eligible or able to compete at the varsity level. And if that says 8 through 12, that doesn't jive with that. So that was a good catch by Brad's part. And then for the dual sports participation at the meeting, the idea was thrown out there for, what was the title of it, the major minor?
Major minor, yeah.
Yeah, a major and a minor be declared prior to the season. And then if there's any conflicts with dual, schedules, double bookings for, events, then, that would be what would determine where that individual would go up, if it's declared major or if it's the minor. So that was, I think, was received positively with that idea, but we didn't really have time to really iron out what that could look like. So what we talked about as the three school leaders is that we would keep that number 1 and number 2, keep that fairly general. And then our ADs between now and the spring season can get together and put together a document. And then when the parents have to request that meeting, in our case, we now do the each season meeting, so like the spring sports sign-up meeting, or spring sports mandatory parent meeting. We could have the regular meeting in the gym where Christy does her speech, branch out into each sport in the classrooms, and then after that, we could any dual sport athletes could come here, and we could have a meeting before they leave that evening, and that would be that required meeting for parents and athletes. And then at that point in time, Christy could give them the dual sports guidelines that they have, hopefully will have created then, or will have created then, and then that'll buy us a little bit more time. So in the future, we can put some of that language that when they do create that document in here, but we figured it'd be best for now just to keep it fairly general. And then we talked about the proficient academic progress to be determined by the athletic directors and principals of each respective school. Was an addition for each respective school. Figured that each school is still gonna have their own academic eligibility policies, so it doesn't make any sense for the head AD to go over to a district that is operating under a different policy and have to learn all 3 policies. We can just leave that at work that can be done at home with each individual district. Then under 5, in cases of termination, that would be termination of the dual sports of kids participating in 2 sports. Excuse me. Let's say they are and it's not going very well. Excuse me. So they would be required that they have a meeting, and that this meeting would include the student athlete, a parent, head coach, and activities director for the student's home district. For athletic stipends, each school pay coaches and athletic directors based on the individual school's negotiated salary schedules. We did talk about that maybe, it may not be a bad idea in the future to look at a salary agreement for the Phoenix Co-op, so that'd be something universal amongst all 3 schools, but for now, that language right there covers us, that it's based off of their individual schools' negotiated salary schedule. So if it's somebody that lives in Freeman or a teacher here at Freeman, in the Freeman School District, it would be, and they're hired for a head coach or a coaching position, that would fall under our salary scale. If the teacher in Marion or a community member in Marion, it would fall under the Marion salary scale. Same thing with Academy. Annual program review, there's a couple of points there. We talked about complaints and what the process would be, and then this goes into, falls into our adopted policy with the parent and coach communication process, so that fits nicely in with that. At the very top of that page, for the maximum number of paid coaches, something that is up for discussion tonight, probably the part that would be, I guess, the highest level of interest for the board would be that the group, after hearing from the 2 coaches presenting, felt that it would be appropriate to bring to the boards for approval from each school board the addition of 1 additional football coach. So for football, if the board chooses to go that route, there would be 1 head coach, 4 assistant coaches, 1 junior high head coach, for a total of 6 coaches. And then for softball, The numbers that were projected were 21, is that accurate? Is that right?
18 to 26, yeah.
Okay, so with those numbers that we discussed, that Amber shared, that that's really, really tough, and that there's gonna be a handful of girls that are coming out and trying softball and they've never played it before, so this will be the first time ever playing the sport. And when you have some that are very, very advanced and have been doing club ball and all, different seasons of different club ball, and then you have some that are ultimate beginners, that's a challenge. And the committee decided it'd be good to put forth to each board member the addition of a softball coach as well. So it'd be one head coach and one junior varsity coach, and the language had junior high in there, so we felt that at this point in time it'd be more of a varsity and a junior varsity versus a varsity and a junior high. So a total of 2 then for softball. And then the final item was just the agreement would have been approved for the initial date and then amended to this if we choose to go that route for December of 2022. Doug, anything to add from the meeting?
Well, as part of this too, we request all 3 schools have talked about continuing to have discussion about other co-ops, so they would like to meet in January. We had asked them to provide their numbers prior to that, and proceed with simply a discussion, but obviously that's a board decision as well, so unless there's opposition, we need to proceed with that first meeting in January, just to see what the other schools are thinking. And I think it would be a good time to discuss numbers, because obviously our enrollment has been growing quite a bit, and the other 2 schools not as much, so we're in a position where we're obviously going to pay the brunt of the cost with any co-op, because it's split up by percentage, and we would be providing facilities for most of the sports, because we have made capital improvements to our school, and the others haven't as much in the recent past. So my personal feeling is I'm open to having a discussion with the other districts to see what their thought process is, because I think this could lead to other things. That was always the discussion in the past, that if co-op agreements work in sports, why can't they work for school programs, marching band, CTE programs, home ec? So to me, that's of more importance than sports, but I think there's nothing hurt by having that initial meeting in January, unless the rest of the board feels otherwise.
Good, with the meeting.
Agreed.
I would encourage you guys to look at the numbers, because once we have that meeting, we'll come back and obviously everybody wants to do what's best for their school, which isn't gonna necessarily make sense for us. And what is best for us isn't necessarily gonna make sense for the other 2 schools involved, but I think there's room for compromise and everything, so. After we have that meeting, we'll report back.
Good with that? All right.
So the 2 sheets that you had, I broke down the numbers. All 3 school districts put their ADMs for 6th through 12th grade. Second page then is just explain that, 'cause you kind of get lost in the numbers. That second page has got the future ADM, so that would be for each year. If that was a year that there was a alignment, classifications and alignments year, that would be the ADMs for Freeman for boys and girls, or just boys. The reason it's broken down with just boys is that there's football's the only sport that it's broken down by boys only for the ADMs to determine classification. And then you got the other 2 schools with their numbers for the same, and then the final in the 2 red columns would be all 3 schools put together. And you can see the year on the far left, so that would be the breakdown starting in 2022, the ADMs, all the way through 2032. So you can kind of get a feel for where we would be at classification wise. And then this is the second sheet is the classification sheet. And then you can, Christie put these numbers together for the next 2. It's the Freeman boys, participation rates, from 11th grade through 6th grade. We did not factor in the seniors because this is focusing on future years, so this year's 11th graders would be next year's seniors, and 6th graders would be a part of that 7 through 12 group. And then the girls for that next page, so those, the breakdown of the numbers, so we get kind of an idea of just where we're at as we look forward to January and start, the conversations with our neighboring districts. We can, have a little bit of a month head start here and get a chance to process some of that before we get into the real nitty and gritty in January.
As you can see, we'll probably be making a jump in football, because we're already gonna be past Sullivan to 11B, which there would be a 2-year transition period, but with our numbers alone, we would not be moving into Class A in any sport, but if in any co-op in any other sport, we would be jumping to Class A in basketball.
Softball as well, correct?
Softball,
We'll be very close, so.
We're right on the border.
it would be right there, yeah.
So our numbers indicate that there's a couple of years in particular that will be really close to that number that will put us up into Class A. This is factoring in just our current numbers within our district. We have had, 2 years ago, we had 44 student growth. This year we had 24 student growth, so if we continue with our growth trends, then that's a no-doubter that we'd be looking at, that would be going up a class, but those are predictions that we can't make yet.
We should be getting a new student tomorrow too. There is a number as well.
So keep trending right there.
I'm thinking 7th grade.
Any questions on any of the documents that were provided?
No. All right. We will require a motion to approve the amended Phoenix Cooperative Agreement. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Doug,
Second.
second by Carissa. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. All right, the school board will hear an update from the policy review committee, and the board will hold a second reading of the following policies. Do I have to read through all that? Thank you.
They're listed on the agenda. Agenda's online if you'd like to see it. So the only thing different from last week was last month, we decided that we were not going to include the policies that were recommended for us not to move forward with. Cody and I met this week to go through the agenda, and we discussed that we'll keep them on there for this meeting just to show that we're striking through. These are the ones that will no longer be there, and then I'll eliminate them from the mix for the final approval.
Okay. The board will hear a report from the Facilities and Grounds Committee.
In your packets, I don't think we have much to report on the hangar.
Working on the lights, just to stiffen them up a little bit, so when they get hit with balls and whatever, that the cage doesn't fall off, so Russ has been over and looked at them, and it's officially okay. Well, we got a fix we're working on, so shouldn't be too invasive. You should be able to buzz over here and take care of it in the afternoon or work around practice. I'll just have him get in touch with you, Chris, and make sure that any of them, when nobody's in there, we'll be in there and get it taken care of.
The heating unit's still on track.
Still tracking, yep.
Other than that, the wrestlers are in, mats are down, and looks great.
You had said one thing about thermostat, right?
Yeah, then we gotta go into that.
Simple thermostat.
Yeah, a programmable stat, and then you can even program it, so if you wanted to start heating up in there a few hours before practice, so you get the temperature, it'd be a fully programmable unit.
Yeah, cause the one that's there now must have 13 different settings, and no one knows the code to. Cause like this morning, I walked in there, it was 72 degrees at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, it was 64 degrees.
I'll get ahold of Baby and have him get the programming.
So I'm guessing, it's just, there's so many different times that thing's been set, no one knows, got a code or whatever to. And it'd be great over Christmas break to, then I could set it for an hour before we could come in.
Sure, yeah, I can get that taken care of for you.
In your packets, there's also some documents from Jeff McCormick from SPN. After a few months of trying to coordinate schedules, we finally were able to connect, and he came on site, and I explained to him our front walkway. He had some fancy devices that made sure that we were not in compliance, and he confirmed that we do have to do something different in that entrance to become ADA compliant. We talked about a few different options, had brought the custodial staff out and got their feedback. Neil was here, so we brought Neil over and got his feedback as well. Neil's the superintendent from Pitts. Just gathered as much feedback from some individuals as we could, and ended up coming up with that there's probably two good options for us. We do want to be careful with that when it's going to have to be a standalone walkway, because it doesn't make any sense for us to tie into the old and then jeopardize the in-floor or in-ground heat system that's in there. So we got to tie into that, but we got to also probably minimize the amount of space where it runs parallel to that without having a buffer space. So when we tie in, it can be just in a 5-foot, 6-foot section. We don't have to worry about the whole entire walkway being tied in, because otherwise we're gonna end up in the same situation that we have at the end of that walkway, where you get where the heating stops and the regular unheated sidewalk starts. You start getting those ice heaves. If there's a buffer where we have landscaping in between the two pads, that'll prevent that from happening. The two options: one runs parallel to the walkway. It doesn't go out as far into the green space, but then there would be, as you can see in that first diagram, the red part would be the addition of the sidewalk, and then in between the existing, that has the crosshatches, existing walkway and the new walkway in red, there would be some sort of landscaping that would take place prior to that, or in between the two. And then on the parking lot side, you can see that rectangle at the bottom. That would be, we're not in compliance with the pad that's at the bottom. We have to have a landing. I think is it a landing or a pad, Doug? What's the proper term?
Landing.
So appropriate sized landing, so it'd be a curb cut that would be added, and have that landing, and then it would gradually work up at that slope of less than 2 inches till we get to the top up by the doors. And the reason that it's connecting at the top there is at the very initial part of our ramp going down, that is in compliance for, it's like the first 10 feet or so, 10 or 12 feet. So since we're in compliant there, we could tie into that walkway at that point in time, and then it would still remain ADA compliant. Second option would be that third sheet there, has more of a angle that would come out and go over in between the flagpole and the light that is out there. So two different options, just a matter of what the board feels is the best looking option. Tonight, what I would say is that we need to decide if this is, when we want to move forward with this, and then which option that we like the best. I guess I certainly could go out and get quotes if the board decided that we wanted to move forward with getting quotes for this, that I probably could get quotes for both, and we could decide later, or we can decide now on which design we like better and move forward with that.
I like option 2 because we don't have the landscape, and I think it's better to get your landing away from the heated section. That way we can downwind to the slab on the other side, so we're not gonna have that heaving issue that we always have. I think we would wanna replace that first section off the heated next year and put a box void underneath it anyway, so I have something to take the frost heave. But, a lot of times there's ice, everything drains to that corner anyway and sits there, and getting the handicap ramp away from that, I think would be my opinion on where we wanna go. Plus we don't have to try to, we're not pouring sidewalk over tree roots that are gonna cause problems later anyway, that tree.
Yeah, that's a good point, Doug. That's something I left out for the first design. One of the downfalls is the tree that's right out the main entry would have to be removed. So that's what Doug is referencing with the, putting a slab on top of old tree roots.
Well, I'm all about saving trees, so I agree with Doug's option.
If we did the more slanted angle, where that pad would be at the bottom is directly in front of the handicap parking spots. So if somebody were to park there, they would go straight to the curbs and then right up that ramp to the front doors, so.
It's not to say we can't move them.
And then when
Spot
the-
either, you know.
Then when everybody parks in front of it there, we can legally tow them.
That's true.
I'm all for towing. I haven't been clear enough about that. I like the towing to be. I've had mine towed several times, I've learned very quickly to not do that.
Are we ready to move forward with receiving quotes for this?
I like the second one as well.
Yep.
The cost associated with removing the tree and then, all the disturbed dirt pouring over the top of it. Seems to rule out option one in my eyes.
The whole thing makes my eyes cross, so I'm just going with what they say.
Okay, good to go. All right, the school board will hold a discussion about the school district paying for an administrator to supervise the band trip to Florida.
In your packet is the memo that Sheila Whip had produced for me, and this is what I had mentioned in my superintendent update last month. So we're looking at the total cost for the trip this year would be, and I would say this is probably a little bit of a guess. Could go a little bit either direction, probably on the higher side than this, I imagine, with the cost of everything increasing. But she felt that the total cost for the trip would be around $1,350. Something that the district has done in the past, to send an administrative rep on the trip.
I guess I'm fine with it as long as she brings us all souvenirs.
I was gonna, yeah, say, or sings one of the songs that they play.
Oh, it'll be some.
I guess we've done it in the past. My feeling is, and this is my feeling, is that we should do it again this year.
Seems safest for the whole group too, because there's a lot of kids.
I agree.
I'm completely indifferent, don't have an opinion.
All right.
Even if you're crazy enough to go hang out with 65 kids. And then,
And be responsible for them, yep.
I'm not making any promises.
I can't wait to see the souvenirs. I bet you Cody's gonna have some Mickey Mouse ears.
All right, we will require a motion to approve the school district paying for the administrator to supervise the band trip. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Chris, second.
Second.
Cody Spangler. All those in favor say aye.
okay.
Opposed? The board will hold a discussion about adding an activities photographer stipend.
This was about a month ago. Jeremy came in and pitched an idea to me. He said that right now Jeremy comes in and takes all of our activity photos, and individuals would go to his website and order pictures. And he said over time it's just been fewer and fewer people that actually follow through with the orders. And he came in and pitched the idea of doing a single stipend. So that would cover the whole entire year for him coming in for activities, for each activity that we have, and then for some of our other activities that we have for the co-curricular type of activities. During the school year, there's, times where we'll call up Jeremy and say, hey, this is happening, come on in, take some pictures, and would be an opportunity for him to come in and take pictures, not just for activities, but for our whole school district, and post them on the website, where parents can go and they can download those pictures, and then they can bring that picture to wherever they choose to have the actual pictures made. But that would be free of charge for the parents, so the district would be assuming that cost, and then the parents could go to Jeremy's website and take those pictures to Walmart, for example, and get an 8x10 made of that picture and have them for at home or graduation or whatnot.
What activities in particular, like we're talking elementary through high school, or?
It'd be, so any, I think Jeremy, and, you know, I clarified with him our high school activities, so sports seasons, every season he comes in and takes pictures for that. And then, what are some examples of outside of sports seasons that he would, like FFA coming in, that he would take pictures? Any other examples of anything potential for anything?
Maybe the band students wanna start getting a picture with their instrument like sports people do,
Sure.
so their parents can get buttoned or something.
Some of the things he's taken photos from me, like, if I call him and ask him, would be like, I took them this year, but last year he took them for the seniors banners, or like our character on track would be another one that he's came in to take them for.
So this would be a classified position, so it'd be just like any of our athletic coaching hires, contract year to year. What I would say would be that in the contract, it should probably specify what exactly this dollar figure would go towards, and that would be a nice way to make sure that, you know, we got a sound agreement if the board decided that they wanted to add this position. I did talk to Debbie. Debbie did share with me that $800 is a lot of money, and from her perspective, that this is something that every other parent in the district in the past has paid for their own activity photos, and she didn't feel that this was a necessary step for the district. That's Debbie's perspective. My perspective, I see Debbie's perspective, but I also see that we have families that you know, paying that, you know, $20 or $30, whatever that picture costs, that might be just enough of a deterrent to where, you know, they can't afford it or choose not to. If we can provide opportunities for our parents and level the playing field, and no matter what their financial income is, then that, in my perspective, that's a good thing that we can do for our families.
Is there any way to track the level of usage, like how many people are actually going to there and downloading the photos? If they weren't, if they're not willing to pay for it from him, I don't know how willing I am to pay for it. But if we do opt to, it'd be nice to know that it was used, otherwise, why are we paying for it?
Yeah, I can ask him that question. If it would be like number of hits that would be at his website, or if it would be actual downloads that he could track, or.
I fix things
I
with
can
a
get
hammer, but I'd
clarification.
like to think that there's some way of tracking how many downloads there
You would
are or
think.
something.
Mhm.
I'm sure somebody smarter could figure that out.
I just think it's a lot of money.
I think if he defined it, it may be an easier decision, you know, if he, you know, say elementary, typically, I can see as many or more people, in my opinion, download those photos for younger kids, so if like he's gonna show up at rally day, or there's thing where there's elementary kids involved, then I would probably feel more strongly about being in favor of it. You know, if it was just high school sports, I think, I have a hard time believing that those parents aren't just gonna go buy the pictures if they want them, I guess.
Or use their phone and print it off media that is already in existence.
Would it be helpful if I talked to Jeremy and asked him to put together a job description, and then come and present that job description to the board, and then the board can ask him directly any questions that he may have?
Yeah, I think so.
I would tell him to see if he can figure out, you know, hits or whatever that he's had on his or on his website too, just for, so we have something to go off of.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you know what we're approving, then it's gonna be easier to make a decision on it or not.
The football photos were quite expensive, I did not purchase one for my child, even though I would like to. Instead, I cropped it, took his name off.
Seems like it was pretty affordable though.
He didn't say that loud.
So screenshot's pretty awesome.
Or like a counter offer, depending on what he's gonna do, you know, maybe like 500 is better than 800, but.
I don't know what all he has time
Yeah,
for either,
yeah.
because maybe he just wants to do high school stuff.
Mhm.
He has that much time, so.
Okay, so I'm thinking the next one, 13 would be a table.
We'll just table that till, yeah, until he can give us some feedback. All right. The school board vice president will appoint a board member to the ASBSD Legislative Action Network. Mr. Doug McCune, would you like to,
Sure, I'll
step
start
up
you.
for that?
I'm ready.
Then lastly, we'll hold a discussion about an alternate date for for our next meeting, the 9th. But now talking with you, it sounds like it has to be in that week.
So we have one board position that's up for renewal, and we need to have everything publicized, whatever steps need to be taken to make that legally happen, to where we can hold that election by the 14th. So we have between the 9th and the 14th, there's a doubleheader on Tuesday, the 10th. There's a doubleheader on Thursday, the 12th. Friday's not typically a great night for board meetings. Saturdays, if we pushed it to the absolute limit, it would be on that Saturday. It was certainly doable. Even Friday night's doable. Logically, probably the best option would be the 9th or the Wednesday, the 11th. Church nights aren't ideal. We don't come ahead at all because you cannot make the 11th either, correct?
Correct.
Suppose we don't want to move it to the first week, do we?
What's that?
We don't want to move it to the first week of January, do we?
It'd be, we would not have all the financials prepared. I suppose we could look at doing a month of 2 board meetings.
You said the 11th won't work, the Wednesday?
But you still have to have one before the 14th.
And so if we did
Do 2 in January?
a special meeting the week of January, the first week of January, and then do a regular board meeting the 3rd week.
Did you say initially it was the 11th or something that week?
The 9th or the 11th, which I was trying to get away from the 9th, but I ended up having to work on the 11th as well, so neither one of them worked, because we have to have it in that week of the 14th.
You could do it Friday.
I worked that Friday too.
Sounds like some
Saturday?
Tonville-based stuff. Bull torture.
Is that enough time? That's right on the 14th.
Is there, we have done board meetings in the mornings. Is there,
I'm leaving by 6 a.m. I don't know that anybody wants to get up or be here at 4:30.
I wake up at 5:30.
He likes to send out emails.
And if I have to miss it, I have to miss it. It is what it is, so if you just want to keep it on the 9th, then I could possibly zoom into it. That's something that's happens too.
The 9th or 11th works well for me.
the 11th?
Sorry.
9th or 11th, 10, Thursday, whatever one that one is. Friday doesn't work real well with me. Saturday seems like that's my church day. So I wouldn't be able to attend.
I'm fine with the 9th and the 11th. I don't care, anytime that week is fine with me, and just the week after. Which is, I guess, is an option anyway. Fold it.
Crystal?
Do we know about Emily for the 9th or 11th? Did she do either or no?
The only thing she told me that it was later in the month that she wouldn't be around.
Yeah, I'm fine.
All right, we'll keep it the 9th then. scheduled board meeting for December 12th, 2022. Do I have a motion? Motion by Doug.
Second.
Second by Carissa. All those in favor?
Aye.
The next meeting will be on January 9th at 7 PM right here in the library.
8 o'clock on the dot.